There are over 5.5 million family-owned businesses in the United States, and it's estimated that about half of all employees in the United States work for a family-owned business. And many of those family-owned businesses, their heart's desire is to pass that on to a family member. We, as a Center Consulting Group, have consulted with businesses throughout the United States in all different shapes, sizes, and industries. And so we've tasted some of that. But we also know that it's not easy. And there's hot spots in family-owned businesses. There's what you call the blessings and the challenges. Billy, what have you found to be some of those challenges uniquely inherent at family-owned business?
I think there's one big one, and that is you have to be prepared. So the transition from a first-gen family business to second-gen family business, and the likelihood of success is about 30%. Going from second generation to third is less than 10%. So you kind of have to know in advance, if we don't get things right, the odds are against us. They're not in favor. I think the second thing is to avoid what I like to call in family businesses, casual hypocrisy. And casual hypocrisy is an unwillingness to have some of those hard and yet careful conversations. So you kind of look and go, wow, I wish we would have had this conversation about a family member who comes in at 10 and leaves at 2 20 years ago, because you're scratching your head now thinking, how do we fill that role and how do we transition that? And if you had just addressed it at the beginning, you would have actually saved yourself a lot of headache. So I think the overarching theme for me is be proactive about the future of your business now. Don't delay it 10, 20, 30 years and think, oh, we'll handle it then.
Yeah, good observations. Greg, you've worked with many family businesses in the past number of years. As clients of the center, what have you found are some of the hot spots?
I would find that the challenge of a family business is you've got all the same challenges any other business has: markets, competitors, hiring the right people. But on top of that, you add the family dynamics. So I think the biggest thing is really being clear about what the expectations are of family members and understanding what hat are you wearing when you're speaking. Am I speaking as a family member? Am I speaking as a shareholder? Am I speaking as a CEO? Am I speaking as an employee? So really understanding what your role is, particularly as a family member, is important.
Yeah, it's really hard, isn't it, for families to know whether they're wearing the parent hat or whether they're wearing an owner hat. And when they get those mixed up, it can get pretty messy. There's real successes we've seen. We've also seen mistakes, right? We're human and mistakes are made. Nobody does it perfectly. Paul, what have you found some of the common mistakes in that transition?
Well, it's often starts with the founder or the patriarch, sometimes matriarch, that has a vision or maybe a plan, but that plan may not be shared by the rest of the family. Every person in that family is very different. They bring different expectations and needs. Some may not even want to be included in the family business. And then you begin to struggle with what's fair. If someone's going to stay in the business, if someone's not going to stay in the business, how do you recognize that from an equity standpoint? Back to Gray's comment, which hat am I wearing? Can I be an owner of a business without working in the business? Back to that clarity. And there have been times we've just had to sit with a family and walk through, what role do you play in the family? What role do you want to play in the business? They can be very different based on personality, where you stand in the family, and just opening that up and doing a lot of family conversation.
Well, what have all three of you seen that really contributes to healthy family dynamics when it comes to business?
I'll jump in first and say, back to Billy's point, clarity, not just clarity within the family, but even clarity of governance. How that organization's been formed, what are the bylaws? We've worked with family businesses that have actually never addressed those things. They've never taken minutes at a meeting. They really don't have a decision-making paradigm that works. So if we can start teaching some of those things and baking those into the business, it's how you move beyond being very person-dependent or family-dependent to being a more operationally successful business.
And family businesses, they've got a unique ability to be nimble at times. They don't have to go through a series of steps and things like that. But that can also be a difficulty because it tends to just make you more reactive to the day, the week, the decision that's in front of you. I still think for family businesses, in my experience, being proactive about those decisions so that the bylaws are what set the future decisions, right? And then just practically, you kind of only get one family. right? You get one family. And especially if you're the parents, your kids will feel very clear about where you are in the wearing of that hat, whether you're kind of the parent, or you're the CEO, or you're the shareholder. And so I would just be upfront about, hey, at family gatherings, like we're going to leave at certain family gatherings, the family business stays. And I know that's hard, but being able to do that, I promise you, will help your kids who are either in the business or are not, because what they need from you at times is to just wear the parent hat.
That's great. I would say the biggest thing I've seen is having a mindset of stewardship. And Paul does a great job of reinforcing that, but just saying, this is our business to steward. And I've learned a lot from one of our board members, Phil Clemens, about how they approached it at Clemens Food Group, where he said, we had to move from being a family business to being a business family. And what he meant by that was go from the business exists to provide a job for anyone in the family looking for a job, and it's all about the family's priorities in the business, versus saying, if we steward this business well and we really run this properly, it will provide for the needs of the family. And I think that's a fundamental difference in mind shift or mindset, is that stewardship mentality. And I think having a plan, to your point too, Billy, a strategic plan so everybody's on the same page, having bylaws, succession plans, so that you're intentional about it.
I'll just say one more thing, because I think you bring up a good point. My experience is that most families don't know how to answer some of these questions. They're so tied in to the family role that they really need somebody from the outside just to provide some guidance on how to do that. And some that I've worked with, they've said to me in the first or second meeting, if only we had done this 5-10 years ago. So I guess my thing is, don't be afraid to ask for help, because in a family business, you kind of look around and go, no, the family can carry it. We can lift this. But this is probably one area where getting some outside counsel is incredibly helpful in being able to navigate the future of where your business is.
I agree with you, Billy. And even looking at the operation of the business, we're not complete as a family. We may not know every piece of operating a business. So getting outside expertise, market expertise, even industry expertise to say, how can we be better? And inviting them into our operation, frankly, even to our board if we get that far.
So I'm going to put you on the spot. Let's go around real quick and you get one answer. What would one piece of advice you would give to a family-owned business, if they were listening right now, to add to healthy family dynamics in the business?
I would say, as a family, start there and look at your family values, your family mission, your family goals, and share together in those. Make it a participative process. It's not a top-down process. Allow your children and even their spouses to build into that, because that's where your future lies.
How about you, Greg?
I would say clarify roles. Make it really clear what everyone's role is, whether they're family, board of director, shareholder, executive leadership. Know which hat you're wearing, and related to that, have a strategic plan that allows you to carry out those goals.
I think for me, whether you're the founder, first or second gen, when you know it's time to relinquish that role, relinquish it well. Like, have a plan to say, I'm at this age, I've made this amount of money, and it's time for me to transition, and do it well. Because the people coming before you or behind you, they want the same kind of abilities and things that were offered to you, and being able to onboard that. And so do that well, so your kids and their kids can be able to step into that business with as great a health as possible. We've seen when people hold on too long.
Mm-hmm. What happens when people hold on too long?
Well, I think there's impact on both ends, right? As a leader, you're not as strong as you once were, and the people who are ready to step in behind you are frustrated that they're not able to make some of the decisions that probably are going to be helpful for the business as it moves forward. You got it to a certain point, and understand, as I try to do in anything I do, I'm a temporary steward of what God has given me right now, and I'm going to steward it to the best of my ability. And when somebody can come along and steward it better, I'm going to give them that opportunity.
Would you guys agree with that?
Absolutely. I think the notion of stewardship, accepting our mortality, that we're here for a season, and investing in those who will push it further, and that may be our children, but it may be our children are going to stay as owners, but we may need others to actually execute and push it forward.
I'll go even a step further. I wholeheartedly agree with that, Billy. And sometimes there's someone better to run the business that's outside the family. The family can still be the owners of the business, But this thing may have gotten so big and so complex and have so many growth opportunities that maybe it's time to say, hey, we need someone who's got more experience at running an organization this size to take it to the next level. And we can enjoy the fruits of that as the owners, as the family owners.
Yeah, think about that. So when a normal, regular organization's looking for a new CEO, they can look at millions of people. But some families limit themselves to a child or two. And so they really do narrow their options of giftedness. So as we bring closure to this, with the number of people getting older in North America and the number of family-owned businesses, those two worlds are colliding. And you have more and more businesses that are going through succession. If they're not, they will be very soon. What is a couple things that you find helps with succession? What are the things you've seen that say, if they do this, it's likely to improve the success? What would you say, Greg?
I just told a client recently, it's really important for that founder not to go from 60 to 0 overnight, and for their replacement not to go from 0 to 60 overnight. So I would say a plan for an orderly transition so that you're raising up that next generation, you're teaching them what they need to know and have a smooth handing off of the baton. I would say that's really important.
Yeah, let me just capitalize that a little bit. I think in some of the families that I've worked with, kind of having an end date in mind and starting from the end date and working backwards. And then asking yourself, okay, if it's 6 to 12 months, is that realistic enough to do a transition? I'm working with one right now where they've been 20 plus years, and there's a lot to unpack. And we've concluded that 12 to 15 months is going to be the right succession. So we kind of have an end date. And now we're working backwards to say, what pieces can we start to offboard to that new leadership group, that younger group? Because there's some things that they just don't know. When you've been in a business for 20, 25 years, it's instinctive in terms of what you do and when you do it and what button you push and the way in which you communicate to your customers or to your constituents.
Which means there's a lot of candid conversation and frankly assessment. And some of the assessments we do to say, who am I? What are my gifts? What are my areas of expertise that I can bring to that? And there's a great argument for it's time to work outside of the business for a little bit before you come back. Clemens Family does that and so forth. And you're bringing more to the business beyond entitlement. If we live in entitlement, we don't do the work to become a better leader, which is what all this is about.
You know, I heard a number of you mention it, and I'll bring closure with this as it relates to preparing for succession, but also preparing for just a healthy family business and a healthy family is whether it's through a consultant or coach, whether it's through an advisory board or whether it's through a governing board. You know, Proverbs 15, doesn't go out of style. There's wisdom in counsel. And that counsel can help a group by having a safe, neutral, professional, skilled third party be another voice in the family. And I think all of you mentioned that somewhere through the course of this conversation. So thanks for contributing.